Thanks, Jonathan. That was a perfect, well-structured presentation. And indeed, what OECD is doing is very relevant, not just in Europe, but also in the ASEAN region, particularly in the Philippines. And that definitely an effective LMIS will help us understand the existence or non-existence of job skills mismatch, especially in the local area. So now I'm opening the floor for questions. Anyone? We still have the microphones on the floor, please. Please, Joseph.
Thank you for the good presentation from Pierre and Jonathan. My question goes to Pierre. You've mentioned that you have the national funding for young job seekers. I would want to know how this funding is actually carried out, because in most cases, you'll find that job seekers, they want to remain job seekers as long as there is the fund. There are those lazy young people who may not want even to get the jobs. They just want to get money from the fund. Just like I would say in Kenya, we have the youth fund. That youth fund is not for job seekers. Now, in this case, I can see that this fund is for the young job seekers. What is the age that one is supposed to remain a youth in order to access this fund? Can one remain a job seeker for more than 10 years and receive this fund? At the same time, I would want to know that whether this includes the persons with disabilities, because here you are talking of young job seekers. What about the persons with disabilities?
Okay, so not just a question, but a lot of questions. So many thanks, Joseph. That's wonderful. So for the first one, in fact, we have in France a national policies for young job seekers. Young job seekers are under 26 years old. And these national policies provide specific job offers for these young people. So that's a way for us to help them to start in their professional life. What can I say? After, of course, we do the same for disabled people, because they need to be helped. When I spoke about the employment recovery rate, it's obvious that those people have difficulty to find a job if we don't help them. So this is why we try to help them with this specific contract.
Good morning. I'm Carmen from the PRC, Professional Regulation Commission. This question is for Mr. Pierre. 2 points. One is a commendation for the very systematic research projects and evaluation initiatives your office is conducting. And so I'm so impressed for that. Now, this is my question. Focus on your research projects, which are divided into two, the geographic research and the thematic research. And I suppose you have gathered a lot of data for this. And I just want to inquire how you systematically share the results of the thematic researches to the higher learning institutions, since your job seekers are the product of these learning institutions.
The first answer for the evaluation, I think that's really important to launch this kind of evaluation, because we want to answer to assessment questions. That's the idea. So we have to collect information to do that. We have to create an assessment protocol to answer this, to answer those questions. That's quite difficult, but that's really interesting to do that, even at a local level. That's the first point. After I can speak about my observatory, because I told you that we provide a lot of information at a local level and with automatic productions. That's really comfortable for us because we can answer different kind of publics. Before doing that, we were all the time asked, can you please tell me about that? Can you please do that for me? Can you please? Now we just have this production that is offered to the general public, and that is really comfortable because we can focus on analysis and propose analysis to different other stakeholders. That's quite different.
My question here is that I believe we have this job portal pertaining to the maximization of the job seekers and the employers. My question here is that how do you manifest to encourage those new graduates from their courses to undertake or to maximize the use of job portal, and those who have been working and underemployed to again go back to the job portal to look into the system. My other question here is that for our friend from Canada, what interventions did you undertake to those cross-country low equilibrium qualifications? What intervention did the OECD group to come up with the alternative courses options to let these low equilibrium components be in the higher equilibrium? Higher equilibrium.
The first point that high qualified people have new expectations, other expectations compared to the other publics. That's why we created this digital website with a new way of learning, new way of searching a job. So, of course, we encourage them to go to this website because they are really easy to do that. And after, we have specific group of discussion for this kind of public. They can work together to find a job. And so we have a Pôle Emploi. Pôle Emploi is my company, a Pôle Emploi agent that is lead a kind of group of exchange discussion so as to share good practice. That's the way we work with this kind of publics, and we have some different way to guide people. And because they are really autonomous at the beginning, they are in this group, autonomous group, and after perhaps 6 months, they change of group and they go to another one that is less autonomous, and so on and so on. They can move and change of group during all the research. And of course, we had sometimes they just lack just some little abilities, and so in these cases we can propose just short training session, not a lot, but just some short training session, and that's sometimes enough to enable them to return to employment.
Okay, Jonathan.
Yeah, is this working? Yeah, okay. So it's a very interesting question you have. So it's probably helpful to explain, which I didn't explain in my presentation, is when we're calculating the high skill, low skill equilibrium, we're looking at 3 indicators. One on the supply side is the percentage of the population that has post-secondary education attainment. So anything tertiary, which would be vocational education and above, is what we calculate. And then on the demand side, there's two indicators we look at. It's the percentage of medium to high skilled occupations. And for that, we go into the occupational codes and then look at what we consider a medium to high skilled occupation. And then wages is the other one. And so we take an average or a median within a country. So we compare regions with regions in a country to come up with that measurement. Now, your question about the interventions is really interesting because this is something that we're now trying to really look at more and more, is what type of interventions are the most important, depending on whether the region is in a low skill equilibrium, a skill surplus, a skill shortage, or a high skill equilibrium. If you're in a skill shortage, typically, I mean, there's more things that need to be done on the supply side. So boosting the level of skills within the local population to meet the job opportunities. If you're in a gap, meaning you have a very highly educated population, I mean, then you have to look more at a demand side approach, which is attracting more investment in. So bringing employers or better quality jobs into a local area, or looking at the existing jobs you have and trying to look at how you can raise the production processes or the level of skills required to work in those jobs to create higher quality opportunities. But this is something that's really ongoing. We started this typology, I think, about 5 years ago. So now our big thing was just getting the data at the subnational level and mapping all the regions across the OECD. Now the next step is looking at really what interventions make the most sense and how can you evaluate whether they make the most sense depending on where the region falls within that classification.
Thank you. And those interventions that you mentioned are been consulted and deliberated and discussed in a multi-stakeholder process, right? The local government with the various stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the reviews we've been doing across the 16 OECD countries so far, we take very much a collaborative approach. So we go into usually 2 case study areas, and we have roundtables with the full gamut of stakeholders. So the employment services, the training organizations, the unions, the employers, and really ask them if it makes sense from their knowledge of the local labor market and get their feedback and hear about what they're doing. And then in turn, we go and we usually have national roundtables where we communicate what we heard at the local level and what that means for national policies.
Yeah, follow up, John.
Just to clarify, I just want to confirm my understanding of coming up with the equilibrium and the low equilibrium and the higher equilibrium component of the scales cap. Is that I believe that you have this cross-regional research. Those countries belong to, those low equilibrium are those countries who are into the developing countries. Though there are some countries like in Southeast Asian or Asia Pacific regions belong to the high equilibrium scales like Japan, South Korea. Those are highly industrialized, urbanized or industrialized country. And then we believe that those countries belong to the low equilibrium skills are those countries who are still in the stage of, in the area of manufacturing, assembly, etc. Where those who are in the higher level skills are those countries who are producing products. So that's why these developing countries are looking at on how to take a look to go into the higher equilibrium skills. So just to confirm. So that would mean that because what you have presented are those members of OECD, and there are some countries who are now into higher level of equilibrium skills. I believe that they are also part of that regard. So do you have that kind of research that these countries who are still at the low equilibrium component, and also those countries across region, Asia Pacific and the other part, that how many countries from the Asia Pacific belong to the higher equilibrium skills?
Right. So it's important to clarify that. So this analysis that we're doing It's data that we've collected, it's data that we only compare regions within one country. So we're not comparing how Japan, compares with Korea and how Korea compares to France, for example. It's just looking at regions within the individual country. So, for Korea, we're comparing how Seoul measures versus Busan, for example, or other regions in Korea. Similarly, for the United Kingdom, the map I showed, it's looking at how does London compare to Blackpool, for example, or Manchester, or different regions within the UK, not across the regions. So that's something that we're now looking at doing, but it's quite difficult because the data doesn't always compare across countries in the way that it's collected, so it's not always reliable. In terms of Southeast Asia and collecting this data, it's definitely something now that we're seeking to do. So we're looking at working within countries in the region to map regions within each country. So for example, here in the Philippines, we're likely to be doing this work over the next year, looking at how regions in the Philippines compare to each other on this map. So the median is always the country median. There's no international median. It's just comparing regions within regions in one country. So yeah.
Thank you. So it's like in the Philippines, you can do a cross comparison between and among the provinces. Sometimes in this region, it's ASEAN region, APEC region. And so we call it subnational in the Philippines. But there's a point that I got from your remarks, John, about the same framework on the skills gap. So John, I'd like to ask you: is the socioeconomic status of say a country or an area be a determinant of skills gaps? Is it a factor? Is the socioeconomic status of an area or local area, is it a strong determinant of skills gap? Because you only mentioned like 3 factors, like you're measuring wages.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and to be honest, I don't have the answer for you. I think that's a study unto itself. I think to look at. Okay. I mean, what we've seen within the OECD countries that have you
factored in income?
Well, that's because GVA we would look at or wages. Mm-hmm. So what I can say is within the OECD countries where we've done this analysis, we found 2 trends. So typically, those areas that are in a high skill equilibrium are more likely to have a lower unemployment rate than the national average, and they're more likely to have a higher average economic output. So those are 2 trends that we're seeing, but we, to be honest, still need to do more work actually linking whether you fall into this classification in terms of economic outcomes. So I can't clearly answer that question. That's a very difficult question.
That's acceptable. Yeah. Are there other questions from anybody for you? Yes, Dr. Shin.
You have 2 websites for labor market information, as you mentioned. One is the job market, the other is the job store. So I think that you explained on the screen, but I didn't fully get it. So what's the difference between 2 systems?
I think the more operational one is job market, because this one provides directly information about vacancies. The second one is about the way you can self-train, the way you can learn to find a job, the way you can learn to how to choose your job. And in fact, this second website proposes to you serious games, virtual interview, or massive open online courses. So that's totally different, because the first one is about operational, how to apply on a job offer. The second one is how to understand the labor market situation, how to find out new tools so as to prepare you to candidate to a job offer.
Okay, I understand.
Thank you, Pierre. Are these 2 websites in French, or you have an English translation? it would be helpful if you could show the link to the sites. Is it in
It's-
English or in
No, it's in French.
French?
But
But I think our Korean colleague would understand because their job portal is also in Korean.
yeah, but I can show you if you want. That's even in French. That's really simple to understand.
All right.
Yeah,
English.
I can translate, and he can translate very well.
I can do that. I can also translate it. But are there? If there's no more question, we can go to coffee break. Okay, excellent. So thank you so much for your active participation, and thank you to our two speakers from OECD and the French National Service Agency.